Zambia is facing one of the worst droughts in history. Almost half of the country's population has been affected, with over 9 million people facing the devastating impact of the drought. Low water levels have equally affected electricity production, with the country now facing a heavy load management program. The government on Friday presented to Parliament a supplementary budget that will help support the drought response, with over 8 billion kwacha going towards social protection through social cash transfer, food for work and school feeding programs. The budget also aims, among other things, to enhance national food security through maize imports. What else is contained in the supplementary budget, and where will the resources come from? My guest this evening, Dr. Situmbeko Musokotwene, Minister of Finance and National Planning. You're watching Sunday Interview. Doc, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm honored once again to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I don't envy your job because you always have to balance the numbers.
On
behalf of the nation.
I also don't envy yours, because I'm sure sometimes you come across very difficult interviewees.
So, Minister, you have presented a 41.9 billion kwacha supplementary budget to Parliament, asking the National Assembly to support government in this venture. Give a background to what has necessitated this.
Yes, thank you very much indeed once again. It became necessary to go back to Parliament to present a supplementary budget. In other words, to ask for more money to spend on certain things. The key reasons why we've had to go back to Parliament for supplementary budget: number one, as you have said, the devastating drought that the country has suffered this year, meaning that food security at national and household level has been threatened, and therefore government needs to respond to this threat. We'll go into the details as we continue. Number two, there have been a few other things that required addressing, more especially with respect to completing the debt restructuring process that we started 2 years ago. But this time around, it is in recognition of some debts that were left, that were not attended to in the debt restructuring we've been discussing about so far. These are debts to fuel suppliers. People used to bring fuel in the country, and debts were left unpaid, and we need to address that because those debts are expensive. Also, there's also debts that ZESCO acquired some time ago, which were not attended to, which makes it difficult, which made it difficult for ZESCO to be able to import electricity, because suppliers, for example, in Mozambique were saying, how can we sell you electricity when you didn't pay that bill, or you didn't complete paying that bill? The third, again, with respect to bills, is the issue of Mopani copper mines. Remember when they left, when Glencore left, they said, Zambian government pay me $1.5 billion for having this mine, money which this government did not have, and therefore could not complete that transaction. And in any case, if we are to pay $1.5 billion, we would not be able to make the mine to be viable. So we took advantage of the fact that the supplementary to be presented to deal with the drought, but also let's deal with these hanging debts that were left behind so that we clean up the slate. So these are the motivating factors that led to the supplementary. We'll go into the details of it. Yeah.
So in summary, I want to understand, I was looking at that budget, and in summary, I came up with 3 themes. Is that a correct summary? One, social protection, which involves food security, food for work, and then you've got debt servicing and investment in dams and rehabilitation of construction dams.
Correct.
Is that a correct summary?
Yeah, correct. But maybe we need to go through some of these items so that the citizens can follow exactly what we are thinking about. I can talk about the issue of how we respond to the food security issues. I can also talk about the debts and so forth.
Let's start with the food security.
Yeah, so food security, as we know, the prices of, first of all, maize has become scarce compared to before. The prices have gone up because maize is not in sufficient quantities, but also because government last year took the measure to say, look, part of the reason why we have this maize problem is because many farmers had shifted away from maize into soybean and other crops which were more profitable. So maize prices were pushed up. This, of course, has created problems for the consumers. The prices have gone up, but also in certain areas, especially the H4 districts in the country which are affected, there's simply no food. Therefore, the question is, and by the way, when we're doing the budget 2024, the effects of the drought were not yet certain.
Visible.
So we did not reflect in the 2024 budget how we would respond to this. Now that we are in the midst of this calamity, we have to change the budget. So what are the changes? First of all, we've categorized the threatened people in two main areas. One are those who are vulnerable because they're aged. I think the magic line is 65 years and above. Then there are those who are disabled for various physical reasons, and therefore the ability to fend for themselves impaired. Then there are those who are able-bodied. They are young, vibrant, but the whole crop just disappears. They have nothing. So how do you help this? Let's start with the vulnerable, the one who are aged, or they are lactating mothers, or they are disabled. We had an existing system called the social cash transfer. And every month they were being paid the equivalent of 200 kwacha. In practical terms, they were getting it every 2 months, so 400 kwacha every 2 months. But for now, we can say 200 kwacha every month. So when we're budgeting, we continue to do that, 200 kwacha every month, 200 kwacha every month for these vulnerable people. But because of the drought, food prices have gone up. That 200 kwacha is no longer sufficient. So in the supplementary now we've said, on top of the existing 200 kwacha, we'll put another 200 kwacha, so it becomes 400 kwacha per month.
This is what you're calling emergency social cash transfer?
No, that is the so-called traditional social cash transfer, which people have been receiving all this time. Remember? So the only change this time is to say 200 is no longer enough. Let's add another 200, so it becomes 400. And that continues to run. Then I want to tell you, to the point that we're just raising now, of emergency social cash transfer. I want to tell you that the vulnerable people who were getting social cash transfer, there were many more in existence than the ones that were registered. For example, if when they were doing the assessment, they found that there are two of you, one is completely nothing, another one has got maybe 20 heads of cattle or something like that. When they registered the original plan, the one who had nothing is the one who came on the social cash transfer. The one who had some cattle crow in the same village, same age, they said, since we don't have all the money, we only support this one who has nothing. You, because you've got 20 herds of cattle, 30, at least you can sell an animal and survive. So this time around, because of the price of
commodities
that have gone up, we have said, even those who would normally qualify under social cash transfer, because they are old, because they are lame, because they are orphans, but they were not on the original list, now they are also being put on the list because of this calamity. And them too, every month, they'll be getting 400 kwacha up to June next year, when we hope the normal crop would emerge. So this is the second element of food protection under this supplementary budget. The third element of dealing with this food security, especially at the household level, is to say, in this year of drought, does hunger only affect the aged, the vulnerable, as we understood them, the orphans? The answer is no. Because even those who are vibrant, 19 years, 25 years, 30 years, they're strong, they cultivated, but they lost everything. They also need to be assisted. But so for this third element, the assistance is no longer
free money.
Free money.
They have to work for it.
They have to work for it. And this is what we call cash for work. Cash for work. And these are the people who will be doing public works program in exchange for cash for work. What is this? This pot of money will be decentralized to all the local councils in the affected areas. They will be given money. Then each local council, going down to each ward or each zone, if you go deeper, they have to sit amongst themselves together with their MPs and councillors and ask themselves the question, here's a pot of money that has come from government. It cannot be given to us free, but we must work for it. The work that we are going to do is public works. In other words, what work can we do that is good for all of us in this community here, so that when we do that work, we get paid for it. Examples, if you're in urban areas, for example, a ward would say, our problem here is that heap of trash that is on the roadside or somewhere nearby there. Because very soon when the rain comes, we are going to have cholera. So for us, the public works that we have chosen ourselves, not from Lusaka, not from Kasama, not from Chipata, but us in this particular locality, we want to clear that rubbish. Another community will say, for us where we are, we normally get flooded when it rains. So for us, the public works is to clear drainages or make drainages. Others would say, for us, our problem here is that we live in a wetland. Our transport mode is by water. We use canals, but the canals have been overgrown with vegetation. For us, the public works program is to clear the canals. So each community would decide.
Identifies the work. So once they do that work, then the council pays them.
Once they do that work, the council pays them. So there's cash in their pockets. There's money in their pocket. So, Grivasio, hand in hand with pushing money to communities, whether it's by social cash transfer, whether it's
cash for work,
money will go into the pockets of the people. And now, in parallel to that, FRA will be pushing maize in localities. You push maize in wards all over these 84 affected districts. This maize is not for them to physically give to the people. This maize that they are going to push there is for those who have been empowered with their cash for work, those who have been empowered with the social cash transfer, and indeed those who may have money of their own because they've sold a cow, a goat, chickens. With that cash that they've received, they can now buy maize.
Buy affordable maize.
Affordable
Now,
maize.
these issues of mainly social protection issues, they're prone to abuse. And this is a thread that has been running through all the governments, and probably with no excuse. And when there's free things, free food, cheaper maize, the money tends to get abused. What measures have you put in place to avoid this?
That's a very
soon you'll be sending in auditors to check on the councils because the cash for work money wasn't distributed. It was given to people that didn't work.
Yeah.
It was misappropriated for salaries or something.
Yes. Of course, the auditors will be going, but also there are safeguards in this. First safeguard is that's why maize is not going to be physically delivered. The reason being that what we've observed in the past, when maize is physically delivered, it was easy for that maize to be pilfered. Sometimes even by people in authority. Maybe I'm high up in the local government area here, maybe I'm a chief, maybe I'm a party official. Therefore, give me $5, give me $10, and what remains for everybody else is less. So this time we've said, this maize, if you touch it, you must pay for it. It doesn't matter who you are. But government will still help you to have cash in your pockets to buy the maize through social cash transfer, through cash for work. So that is one element of protection.
So there's no separation between the vulnerable and those that are getting cash for work and those that are well-to-do in terms of buying this maize. Anybody is eligible.
Anyone is eligible, and this is the second thing.
We'll soon not see police, army, ZNS on the roads trying to block those that have money who are going to overbuy this maize and try to export it.
No, that's why I said that this maize is going to be pushed to local areas, wards. And as we do so in the wards, the local leadership there, the councillor, the MP, and so forth, because it's a locality, they'll be able to tell that this one coming to buy maize here is a resident of this area, especially in rural areas, these affected areas. This one who is trying to buy maize, we don't know this person. So we'll not allow him to buy this person, to buy the maize. But also, this is why the price of maize will be more or less market-based.
Market price.
Meaning that the incentive for somebody to go and buy maize in Nyimba, where government is pushing this maize, buy it from there and go and sell on the copper belt, that incentive will be drastically reduced because it is the market price. You buy it in Nyimba for, say, $3.30, you go to the copper belt, it will sell $3.30, so you lose money.
But you can buy it in Nyimba and take it to Malawi anyways.
You can buy it in Nyimba, take it to Malawi, but this is where the issue of local knowledge, the councillor, the MP, more especially the councillor and the local people, they will tell that this one is
not buying to alleviate the situation.
Yes.
Now let's examine the budget in detail. I noticed that the bulk of this supplementary budget goes to debt service.
Yes.
About 71%. Is that the correct position? I know that you've got 14.6 billion or 34.8% to service external debt, and 15.2 billion, which is roughly 36.3%, towards dismantling fuel arrears.
Yes.
Debt is still a challenge?
Debt, we are still resolving the issue of debt, but we are at the point where resolutions are being made rather than pushing the problem forward. Let me go through the first element there under debt.
Debt service.
Is that of debt service.
External debt service.
Yeah. You remember, we have borrowed. 2020, we defaulted. From 2020, we're not servicing our debt, okay? But that cannot be failing to service the debt or not servicing the debt is not the solution. In other words, a country, the whole country like Zambia, you can't go and borrow and run away or hide because there's nowhere to run to, there's nowhere to hide. We have solved the problem. The problem is to start paying back our debt. But paying back our debt under the old conditions was not sustainable, in the sense that we would devote all the budget or most of the budget to servicing the debt, we fail to send children to school, we fail to pay salaries, we fail to do infrastructure. That's why now there was that discussion of, can we restructure the debt? You restructure the debt so that you come back to paying your debt and become a respectable citizen of the world once again. But because the debt has been restructured, the payments that you are making now are much less compared to what you'll be paying if you had not restructured the debt. To give you an example of the official creditors, up to 2031, if the debt was not restructured, we would be paying more than 6 billion per year. But now it's much less. Okay? So we've restructured the debt so that we can resume servicing it, but still be able to send children to school, still be able to have money for CDF, still manage to hire teachers. That was the whole essence of the debt structuring. Now, from 2020, when we defaulted, we're not servicing the debt. Now that we've restructured, we must resume servicing the debt. At the time when we're doing the 2024 budget, the discussion on the restructuring had not yet been concluded. So the conclusion came after the budget had already been passed. So now we have to go to Parliament and say, this debt that we're negotiating to pay back, the discussions are over. Now we know how much we must pay per year. So can we put that in the supplementary budget so that we service the debt? So obviously this is good. As you have heard, Zambia is once again being a respected country, because when you don't service your debt, no one trusts you anymore. So that is one element. The second element is the
fuel.
The fuel,
which is 36% of the supplementary budget.
Yes. This fuel, this is a bill that this government inherited as we took over power in 2021. The bill then was just under $500 million of fuel that had come in but had not been paid for in full. There were some payments made but was not paid for in full. Now, because of the delays in servicing that debt, clauses in the supply contract for that fuel, which said, if you don't pay me in time, there will be penalties to be paid. So those clauses kicked in.
Does that explain the fact that people have argued that you found this bill, it's not yours, it's a date, $400 million.
Almost 500, yeah.
Almost. But then you've run it up to $800 million.
Yes, because the contracts that were signed, to supply this fuel, that's why I'm saying they had penalty clauses. A penalty clause which says, if you pay me late or you don't pay me at all, there's going to be extra charge that you must pay. Some of these penalty clauses were as high as 24% of the value of the debt, which means that if I owed an oil supplier $100 million today, after 4 years, that $100 million becomes $200 million. So because we're not paying this, starting from the PF days, it started growing. We were paying, this government has been paying, but the payout clauses have been so high that whatever we were paying was being swallowed and remaining. So this is why the bill has been going up to almost $800 million. So the plan now is to say, because of these payout clauses, which increases the value of the debt all the time, it's better for us to pay it off or borrow at a cheaper rate and pay off these bills which are more expensive. So there's a savings there and stopping the bill from going up.
So I want you to combine this question. You've advanced ZESCO 30 million kwacha, lent them 30 million, maybe that's what I should say. And there's this 15.2 billion towards fuel. Does it mean once this money is paid out, the debts go away? We start on a clean slate in terms of fuel, in terms of the debt that we had with Mozambican companies on the electricity?
Yes, for the fuel, once we pay the suppliers, the debt will no longer be with their fuel suppliers. Because of that danger of it going up all the time, the debt will now be with the people we are going to borrow money from at a cheaper rate to clear these debts. The money that we are going to borrow, we'll borrow it at terms that are possible to pay back, in terms of the period of paying back, in terms of the cost of the money. So this is something that is going to stop the bill from going up and up and up. On the ZESCO, just to explain this, you remember the year when we had another serious power crisis?
2015, 2016.
Yes. So at that time, electricity was being imported from Mozambique, if you recall, from a ship.
From a ship.
Yes. That's where electricity was being imported from. Unfortunately, again, that electricity being imported from Mozambique was not paid for in full. There was an amount that was still pending. From 2015, that amount was never paid. So now, when ZESCO went to Mozambique to say, we need to import some electricity from you, you still have a little bit yourselves. The Mozambique business said, but remember in 2015, you imported the electricity from us and you didn't pay us in full. So for us to be able to sell you something now, you must at least clear what you are owed before. So this is why government had to on-lend to ZESCO to be able to clear what was owing from 2015 so that the Mozambicans would be able to sell electricity to us. So these are the legacy issues that this government found in place, which were never resolved, which we are now resolved.
Have to be resolved.
Yes.
So while we're still at date, I want you to clarify this issue. There's a growing narrative that as UPND government, you are borrowing more than the PF did in 10 years. And in trying to clarify that, I want us to look at numbers. One, is it true that the country's debt has grown from $11 billion external debt to 16 billion? That's just one. The second one is that, is it true and correct that domestic debt has grown from 178 billion kwacha when you took office to 230 billion kwacha currently? The third one is that, have you borrowed $5 or $6 billion as a country, as a government in the last 3 years? Are these figures which are circulating, which are in the media, which are in social media as well as just traditional media, are they the correct state of what you have borrowed? Yeah,
unfortunately, I cannot answer to the specifics of the numbers because, as you can imagine, my head can only take so much. But I'll answer in terms of principles, which are very important. It is true that we have borrowed money since coming into office. It's true. Part of the reason, as I've explained before on this forum, there were some projects that were advanced stage, which, if we are to say, we cut it it means that we'll be left with a piece of infrastructure where you are going to pay the debt, but also it is not giving you anything. Example, the Kafulafuta Dam on the Copper Belt, which is supposed to supply water to those towns. At the time when we came in, the dam was advanced, maybe 70 to 80%, but it was not fully completed. So what do? Do you say, we stop this, cancel the loan, and then you have just a huge concrete in front of you, which is not producing anything? We said, no, this must continue, we complete it. So some of these loans that we are talking about now were loans to complete projects initiated by our colleagues, because leaving them halfway, it did not make sense. Secondly, people must distinguish between the type of loans that we are borrowing now and what was being borrowed then. It's not just the numbers to say you borrowed 100, you also borrowed 100, therefore you are the same. No. You have to look at the conditions to each of these loans. The loans that we are getting now are loans from the so-called multilateral lending institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, the European Union, African Development Bank. These are what are called soft loans, payable over a long period of time, interest rate sometimes 0, sometimes less than 1%. So there's a difference. You can't compare and say you borrowed 500, I also borrowed 500, therefore we are the same in terms of being careless. No, look at the conditions.
I've always asked you this question,
now,
Minister. Are you pushing the debt to a stage where you will not be there to pay?
No, no, no.
I mean, when you talk of debt, we're distinguishing it. Long period, yes, but then 2040, you'll probably not be in government.
Yes, but I've also always said that part of the problem that was there before is that you're borrowing, but you did not care much about your source of future revenue. Because you borrow to pay 5, 6, 10 years from now, you must also ask yourself, what industries am I supporting to grow so that by the time I start paying, those industries will easily provide me money to pay off
the debt service.
So this is why we've always said we must make sure that the target to get into 3 million tons of copper is one sector, even before we talk about other sectors like agriculture, manufacturing. But from copper alone, which ends foreign exchange, let's aim for a target of 3 million tons so that by the time these loans mature, the money that will be coming from this copper will easily enable us to pay off. But I want to make one final point on this debt, because sometimes it can be very technical, and describing that then we'll be talking to ourselves and not reaching out to our citizens. And the point is this. Our colleagues were saying you are borrowing excessively, also like the way they did. One of their biggest weaknesses is to understand these basic financial things. When they were busy borrowing large sums of money, the whole world, the World Bank, local economists here in Zambia, local economists in Africa, they were saying, you're overborrowing. And our colleagues said, oh, no, we are okay. Everything is fine. Remember that. That's what they said.
It was in Parliament.
Even outside Parliament.
In opposition, you would raise that issue as
well. Even outside Parliament, they were saying, no, everything is fine.
But probably the question will be, are you also counting the numbers and the figures so you don't end up in the same boat?
That's the point I'm coming to. They did not understand that there was a problem. Today, again, they do not understand that we found a solution. Okay? The solution is A, we have restructured the debt. B, we are creating this industry as said. By the time these loans are maturing, they'll easily be paid. It is for this reason that those who were warning, the international community that were warning Zambia at that time, that we are headed for trouble, the same international community today are praising Zambia for the steps it has taken to restructure the debt and bring Zambia's debt back to sustainability. The same one who used to warn us, now they are congratulating us to say, you have done wonders to restructure the debt. At the same time, those so-called, what we call them, credit rating agencies, as Zambia those days was getting deeper and deeper into debt, we saw Zambia's rating getting bad and bad and bad until they said Zambia's debt, no value. Today, because they've seen us restructure the debt and the reforms that we're doing in the economy to be able to pay back what we have restructured, you see the credit rating agents doing what? It's improving, improving, improving. So in short, what I'm saying is that we are being criticized by people who don't understand these things, because at the time they were getting into trouble, they did not see it. Now that we are getting out of it, again, they don't see it. But the whole world says, Zambia, now you are getting on a sustainable path. So it's an issue of misunderstanding on their side.
So you're very sure, you can assure the Zambians that you definitely prevent the country from sliding into where we were before?
Not just me.
Heavy debt?
Not just me.
Debt
but
that we're able to
independent.
Pay? Are you looking at the figures? That's the bigger question.
Yeah, we are looking at the figures.
You don't want to end up with 10 billion?
No, that will not happen.
10 billion in 5 years?
This is what
$10 billion.
This is what I'm saying. We will not get there. But also, remember I said, the conditions of the debt differ. If you go and borrow at very exorbitant terms, like these oil bills that I was talking about, where
commercial creditor.
Yeah, commercial creditor, and it's 10 billion, that is different from 10 billion if we were to get there, which I don't think we'll get. It's very concessional rate of 0% interest rate. And also, some of this money that is coming through is grants. For example, this year alone, the World Bank will give us more than $200 million grant, money never to be paid back. This is part of the money that is in this supplementary budget to be able to feed.
Now that you've gotten there, I want us to quickly to get to the source. And I know that you've spoken about this supplementary budget, but when I listened to you, the picture looked gloomy. You spoke about agriculture taking a knock of 19% down, and you talked about the economy, the projection growth going down to 2.7, 2.3, down from 4.7, which was projected. That's a huge knock. That's almost half. And when we look at inflation, it's moved from 12.7, is it now, from last year, third quarter, to 14, over 14% this year. Picture looks a little gloomy. Where are you going to get the money from in terms of funding this supplementary budget?
Before I come to where the source of the money is going to come from, let me say that before the drought, we're expecting a growth of 4.7%. Last year, we had a growth of more than 4% again. So please take note of the fact that from 2021, the economy has been growing. This year, of course, it is growing also, but at a reduced rate. The only reason why it is this growth of this year has come down is because of the drought. Part of this growth was to come from farming. But the farmers, many of them, have lost almost everything. That's why even the buying power, this time of the year, normally you see shops are full. Why? Because the farmers have sold their maize, they want to go and buy plows, they want to go and buy bread, they want to go and buy mattresses. That is not happening this year because the farmers have lost everything, or nearly everything. But this is not to say that we should look at the future with gloominess. For me, actually, I look at the future with a lot of hope, because surely we cannot have a drought year in, year out. So if we have normal rain season this coming season, to which I think the experts say it will be so, you can imagine the jump that is going to take place in agriculture. We will recover this loss that we suffered this year. So once again, when the farmers have sold their maize or whatever, these shops will be full of people buying, because farmers have been empowered. They've sold something. Starting from next year, we expect serious expansion in the mining sector. Okay? The manufacturing sector is also coming up very well. Every other day, we see people making applications to do this and that manufacturing. So as far as I'm concerned, the tough economy that we are experiencing this year is a very temporal phase. Going forward, I think the Zambians will be very happy that they will see an economy that is going to be stronger than ever since independence. That I can tell you.
Stronger and resilient.
Stronger and resilient ever since independence. But this year has been tough. Now, coming back to the issue of the money, where is the money going to come from? First of all, as I said, we are getting wonderful support from the international community. I don't know how much we can thank the World Bank, and this support is coming not as a new loan, but as free money grants. We have also received very good support from the IMF, and these are not monies that were anticipated in the 2024 budget, so they're coming up to cover the hole that is being created as a result of the support we are giving to our people. So thank you, international community, for this. Secondly, Gervasio, as the international community support us, we also have to show that we are making sacrifices to be able to feed our unfortunate citizens who are faced with this hunger. We have to make that sacrifice. That's why Cabinet has allowed most ministerial budgets, not all, most ministerial budgets, we are going to cut them by an average of 30-35%. Targeting things that we think we can do away with, because there's a better way of using that money, what? To feed the people. So I want to urge our colleagues in the public service. Unfortunately, this year, the budgets will be cut, as I said, 30-35%, mostly on things that we think we can do without, things like perhaps low-level value of training. There is some training that is, of course, always important to do, but there is some training that can be postponed. Things like seminars, travels. I myself, this coming week, I'll sit with my directors, the Minister of Department, Minister of Finance, to tell all of them the decision of the Cabinet. Our budgets on certain items will be 30% lower than what appears originally passed by Parliament. Therefore, we must also tighten our belts. So, this is what I say by saying that we must sacrifice.
So largely, it's workshop and travel. Is there any other issue that is appearing in the 35% that you're targeting?
Mostly those, of course, we've been careful to make sure that critical things like road infrastructure, CDF, we don't touch those because those are development areas. Of course, we also cannot touch the salaries of public workers. So we've been very careful to choose which areas we are going to cut so that we save money. With that money, we can help to save the lives of our people out there.
There's a school of thought that once you deal with travel and workshops, this is seen as a driver to economic boom in the hospitality industry, as well as just in the general community. When civil servants travel, when you hold workshops, then you inject income into the community and into this sector. It means the hospitality sector suffers. Government is a big spender in this area.
Well, I think I have 2 points there. Number one is, what can you do? Should we say we should allow people to die because then the hotels and all these people who have no business? We cannot do that. That would be inhuman. The hospitality industry, they can find other ways of surviving. They don't just depend on the government. They are also private occupiers, consumers of their services. And secondly, I would want to say that this money that we are cutting from the budget, that money is going to be locked away. This money was to get in the economy because it's going to pay somebody out there, whether in Kanyama doing the public works program that I spoke about, or somewhere in Katuva constituents out here for some people to build a bridge across a stream. So that money was to go back in the economy, and I'm sure if the recipients of this money get it, somehow it will find itself back in the economy.
You've spoken about concessional financing using both domestic and external sources. This is borrowing again we're talking about.
Yeah, I've said so. We never said we never borrow.
How big is this, maybe, just for the purpose of the public to reassure them? You're talking of a percentage of this concession budget that is going to be borrowed.
You see, your worry about borrowing by this government should be the least, as far as I'm concerned. Why? Firstly, because as we implement this program, we implement it together with those who are supporting us, like the IMF. And part of what we've agreed is that we should never borrow unsustainably. Okay? We should never borrow unsustainably. So as the IMF supporters continue to support us, obviously they look at the numbers of borrowing that Zambia is undertaking. They certify themselves that the borrowing that is being proposed is and remains sustainable. If they were not satisfied with that, they would say, you again get into debt and sustainability. How can we as IMF lend you and enhance that debt and sustainability? And therefore, we are walking away. This is why they walked away around 2015, 2016, because in the discussions, they observed that whereas they were advising government to slow down and debt, not to stop, but slow down so that the debt is sustainable, the actions of the government were contrary to that, continuing to borrow unsustainably. They are on board now, continue to support us, because in the assessment and in our assessment and in the assessment of the international financial community, everyone sees that Zambia is too debt and remains debt sustainable. That's why, even as I said earlier on, the credit rating agencies are improving the credit standing of Zambia. So it is not about dollar for dollar, because yesterday I borrowed 10, you've also borrowed 10, me started borrowing 10, I caused debt and sustainability. Therefore, by extension, even you're borrowing 10 now, you're also causing debt and stability. It's not like that. You have to look at other parameters that affect
yes,
that.
Yes. I want you to answer maybe this last question, since we seem to be running out of time. Dams, you've spoken about dams, rehabilitation and construction. When does this start? And it looks like a relatively smaller, lesser part of the budget. Shouldn't it have been the biggest part of the supplementary budget?
It is a substantial part. Yes, there's money in the budget. I think probably about 700 to 800 million. rehabilitate dams, create dams, boreholes sinking, because there are communities where water is a very serious problem as we speak right now. So boreholes are going to be created. And that process, I think the procurement process is already started. Now, you said it should divide a lot of money. Yes, I agree. But remember, we only have this pocket of money. In that pocket of money, you must allocate in a balanced fashion. The biggest priority right now is to ensure that no human life is lost. That's why within the package of response to the drought, the biggest component is to feed the people. Because if somebody dies today and you create a dam which you will use next year, in the meantime he has died, that dam becomes of little value to somebody who has died. So first priority, feed the people. But within that, of course, water development has also been catered for. Not just that, the budget for livestock, supporting livestock, medicines and supplements and so forth, that has also been enhanced, because some of these communities, especially southern, central, western, livestock, cattle, is part of agriculture because they need oxen to plow. So we need to support them so that this asset that they have is not destroyed, because if it gets destroyed, this is going to come back to hurt us on the agriculture side because there will be nothing to plow with.
Minister, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. It's a pity we've run out of time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Pleasure is mine.
You've been watching Sunday Interview, and our guest this evening was the Minister of Finance, Dr. Situmbeko Musokotwene, who was looking at the supplementary budget which was presented to Parliament on Friday. Join me next week, same time. Pleasant viewing.